G'day guys and welcome to ReDriven. Now there's an ancient and slightly offensive Japanese proverb that oddly relates to this week's car, and it is this. Yeah, I know, like offensive, right? Now for those of you that aren't fluent in Japanese, what that translates to is there is only one thing that can beat Chuck Norris, and it is the 60 Series LandCruiser. Now look, I was as shocked as I'm sure you are because I know we both think that Chuck Norris is completely invincible, but that proverb was written hundreds of years ago when the LandCruiser was the most dominant force in the world. But now that these things are over 30 years old, are they still dominant? Are they worthy of their cult-like status? What do they like to live with? What goes wrong with them? And most importantly, should you buy one? Let's find out. Now guys, before we get deep into the 60 Series LandCruiser, can you please do us a solid and hit those like, subscribe and bell icon buttons? And hey, why not go and follow us on all the socials as well? Cheers. Now in this video, we're going to be focusing on the Australian variants of the 60 Series LandCruiser. But if you're not from Australia, don't panic because everything we're going to be going over should relate to LandCruisers or 60 Series in your local market. Now look, we won't be going into every single variant of the 60 Series LandCruiser because that would take far too long, but we actually have done that and we've put it in our handy ReDriven cheat sheets.
Our cheat sheets are invaluable as they provide a full breakdown of the car's model range, its common problems, what you need to look out for before you hand over your hard-earned cash, how much of that cash you should be handing over, and so much more. Check it out in the link below. The 60 Series marked a transition point for the LandCruiser, visually moving away from the quaint old FJ55 styling while retaining the FJ55's overall proportions and ladder chassis construction with the body bolted on top, as well as the 55's front and rear leaf springs and live axles at both ends, meaning that while it was now a far more sophisticated four-door five-seater truck, it would still tackle even the toughest terrain that you could throw at it. The 60 Series was released in Australia in 1980 in 3 trim models, as either the FJ60 fitted with the 4.2 litre petrol 6-cylinder engine, or 2F in Toyota speak, and the HJ60, which got the 4-litre 2H non-turbo diesel engine.
A 4-speed then 5-speed manual gearbox was standard fitment, and an automatic option didn't arrive until its facelift in 1985. It launched with 3 different trim levels: the standard, the Deluxe G, which sounds like a Brooklyn rapper from the 1980s, and this, the Sahara.
The facelift for 1985 brought with it some really good changes, including a new petrol engine called the 3F in a model called the FJ62, an optional 4-speed automatic for the top shelf model, and a turbo diesel engine dubbed the 12HT in the HJ61, which still rates as one of Toyota's best ever oil burners. There was another facelift in 1988, which is pretty easy to tell because it has dual rectangle headlights replacing the round ones, and the petrol variants also moved from a carburetor to fuel injection.
Now this particular 60 Series is a HJ61 from 1986 and it has the 12HT engine. And look, it's not exactly standard and it has seen some pretty serious restoration work, but we feel it straddles that balance between the really tired, worn out 60 Series going really cheap and the crazy, completely restored from the ground up, very expensive models. It's a good test car.
As far as the aftermarket accessories go, it's fitted with some ARB bar work, Dominator winch, a Kmart bar, and 33-inch Hankook Dynapro all-terrains.
Now, if you are in the market for a 60 Series or really any 4x4 for that matter, make sure you go and check out our Ultimate 4x4 Buyer's Guide before you go shopping because there are some critical things you need to check. Okay, does it look good? Okay, subjective stuff out of the road first. I reckon the 60 Series is one of the most handsome LandCruisers, if not one of the most attractive 4x4s ever. I'm old enough to remember when these things were just tired, old, worn-out 4x4s, but now 30 years on, they just exude cool. I love it. I cannot get enough of this whole two-tone paint job. I love the stickers, and these wheels, these are genuine Toyota Hurricane optional extras for this particular car. I don't know if wheels get any cooler than that. Amazing. As far as sheer size-wise goes, like I know it looks really, really chunky, but if you put this next to like a 100 or a 200 Series LandCruiser, it's going to look like a RAV4. It's actually not that big. It still looks so tough, but. Okay, as far as quality goes and what to watch out for, guys, it's the big R word, rust. And where you need to look for rust is just there, the whole thing. But to be more specific, check around the bottom corners of the windscreen, the top drip rails on the roof, around the base of the tailgate, the inner wheel well, behind the front tyres, the outer rear wheel wells, and get underneath and check the rear frame rails near the spare tyre. Now, if you do find any signs of rust, it's pretty safe to assume that there's 3 times more rust hiding somewhere else, because rust is just inherently evil. And besides that, just look for any serious signs of off-road abuse or dodgy repair work. So look for bog or just dodgy looking paint jobs. So how's the interior? Well, look, this thing is over 30 years old and it feels it. It's just so utilitarian and tough, and I love it. I love it. This dashboard has been replaced because the factory fitted item cracked due to the sun, but like all the switchgear, everything just feels like rugged, like it's never gonna break. This thing will outlast humanity. As far as quality goes, look, these seats are renowned for tearing and kind of falling to pieces. It's a pretty easy fix. You could just get them retrimmed or maybe even put some LandCruiser seats in from a later model LandCruiser. But yeah, if you're getting them retrimmed, maybe get them just refoamed as well, because it's a little uncomfortable. Now, quick consumer warning, the lower spec models of these come with vinyl floors and vinyl seats, meaning that in an Australian summer, the seats heat up to a point where they will turn your skin into some sort of molten flesh. The positive is if someone's walking behind you and you're wearing shorts, they might think you're Deadpool, but the negative is it's immensely painful. This particular car has all new carpet, waterproof underlay, and new sound deadening, and honestly, it feels luxurious. No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel luxurious, but it is heaps nicer than standard. Okay, in the back, look, I'm 6'2", this is in my driving position, and I feel like I'm being forced to crawl up into a ball. The seat sits really low versus where the floor is, so my knees are up high. There's not a whole lot of foot room, there's a stack of headroom, but yeah, knees are smashed up against here. Got to do the old leg spread again. Not very ladylike. Also, this seat, I don't know what's going on with the springs in the seat, but it's getting very intimate with my bum. Not a bad thing. How's the tech? What tech? This car's from 1986. There is no tech. Standard, it played cassettes and AM and FM, which is pretty amazing. If you want Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, any kind of phone connectivity, you're gonna have to do what this guy's done and fit an aftermarket unit. Besides that, no tech. But as far as mod cons go, it does have power windows. It has a digital clock. It has an inclinometer. And it has hot and cold air conditioning. How's the practicality? Well, the boot is huge. So much space back here. It's lovely. Also, look at this timber. Very masculine. I like wood. Practicality in the back seat, you've got some nets in case you go fishing. If you're disgusting and filthy, there are some ashtrays here. And that's about it. There is, weirdly, like climate control or air conditioning controls up here, but the weird thing is, we've looked, we can't find where the air comes out. Like where are the vents? Because they're not under the seats, they're not in the doors. There's controls. They might be controls for nothing. It might just all be psychological, but yeah, practicality, not a whole lot. Okay, as far as practicality up the front goes, it's actually pretty good. There's a big cubby hole here. There's some spots for your coins. There's a slight depression in this for like your iPad keyboard. There's a there's a massive bin here. 2 cup holders, a spot for your Nokia 3210. If you're filthy and disgusting, there's a spot for your ashes for your cigarettes. Gross. There's a metal glove box with 2 spots for your Piccolo or your espresso, which are only secure if you're not moving at all. It also has the world's smallest door pockets. I don't know what you're going to get in there. Maybe a small novel. 50 Shades of Grey won't fit in there. No chance. What goes wrong? Well, on one hand, it is a Toyota, but on the other, it is more than 30 years old, so surely something must go wrong with these. But I'm not a mechanic, so I'm not qualified to tell you what those things are. Luckily, Jim is a mechanic.
60 series LandCruisers. I love these things. They're terrible, but I love them. Back in the day when I was an apprentice, I cut my teeth on these things. I know them inside out, and I can tell you everything that goes wrong with them. The 2H petrol, incredibly slow, and they do have a habit of burning out valves because they run lean. There's probably not many of those left though anyway. The 2H diesel, also incredibly slow, but they do go forever. I've seen them at 300,000 Ks have a turbo fitted to them, and a set of injectors, and they go for another 300,000 Ks. They don't go much better with a turbo, but they go forever. They're great. Driveline-wise, axle seals are a problem. The rear ones, they spew out oil on the rear brakes. And the front axle seals spew out and dribble down the swivel housings. The other problem with those swivel housings is the bearings always flog out, so be prepared to change them. All the steering and suspension and leaf spring bushes will all be worn, and they will all need doing. They have a problem where the gearbox and transfer case drain into each other. So the old trick we used to do was put a bypass hose between the two filler plugs. That fixes that. That's not a problem. The diffs are pretty strong and they will go forever, but serious four-wheel driving, they might break. But other than that, they're really strong. Electrically, from the factory, they're very simple and have very few problems. If you're looking at one, go right over it, check out all the mods have been done properly, make sure it's got a good service history. Have a look at our Ultimate Buyer's Guide right here and go through that, and that'll help you look for things you need to look for. Besides that, not much goes wrong, but you will be working on it every weekend and you're going to love it.
Is it safe? Well, it is big and tough, so as long as you hit something smaller and softer than you, like say a mattress, compared to modern cars, it's not that safe. Although, you could probably just drive it over any problems that you run into. Now, as I mentioned before, this 60 series is restored and modified, so that does need to be taken into account when it comes to these driving impressions. But let me just say, if you're used to driving modern 4x4s and SUVs, this thing might genuinely be a little bit terrifying. First up, this thing is slow. Like, I'm talking the movement of the Earth's tectonic plates might be faster than it. It is very cumbersome to get up to any kind of speed. Like, the engine's power delivery is smooth, and look, I'm sure it's got plenty of pulling power. You could probably pull a house down with this thing, but when you plant that right foot, yeah, you don't actually move forward very quickly. But like, of course it isn't fast. It's a 36-year-old 4x4 that weighs about the same as the apartment building that I live in. If you think this is going to be fast, you're an idiot. Okay, as far as the gearbox goes, it's very mechanical, and it can be a bit of a, no, that was the wrong gear. It can be a little bit of a multiple choice questionnaire more than actually picking the right gear. That is a challenge. The steering is so vague. Like, you're not actually sure that where you steer the car is where the car's going to go. And there are times where you start to turn and you go, oh, okay, I'm taking this trajectory on this corner, and then it just doesn't take that trajectory on the corner. So you have to oversteer or unlock the steering. It's pretty dicey. And when you tip it into a corner, you literally, oh Jesus, you literally tip it into a corner because the whole car, the whole angle and attitude just feels like the whole car's going to roll over. Which is, like, I think it's fun. Most would find it absolutely terrifying, but I think it's hilarious. But of course, that body roll means that its articulation off-road is absolutely superb, and that's where this car shines, is off-road. Not here on this bit of road, because this is actually a bit scary. Because those front and rear live axles are really heavy and this thing is set up to go properly off-road, the ride quality is so harsh and crashy. Like, I'm talking badly set up sports car, hard and crashy. You feel every nook and cranny on the road. It's pretty uncomfortable. Also, those axles tend to wander around each other too a little bit, so you're constantly moving about. You have to be like constantly aware, which you should be when you're driving anyway, but especially in this, it doesn't really follow the same course at any one point in time. It just has a mind of its own as it wanders all over the place. And the lift kit and the larger tyres just add to that cumbersome, vague, I don't know what the hell's going on kind of feeling. And it's noisy in here. Now we're up to nearly freeway speed and the wind noise is immense, the road noise is crazy, and it's so rattly. It sounds like you're driving inside a big metal toolbox. So when you mix the off-road focused suspension and the fact that it's about as aerodynamic as my apartment building, and you can understand why it wanders all over the road, this is like genuinely a bit scary. Like, I get to drive a lot of stuff, but this is kind of terrifying. It's fun, don't get me wrong, I love it, hilarious, but man, every day, yeah, I don't know. As far as the brakes go, look, they're not horrible, but they're definitely not great. If you are test driving one, make sure you dive on the brakes and make sure it doesn't pull to one side or the other or makes any horrific noises. If it does, it's going to need some work. Look, when it comes to on-road ability, almost every other modern 4x4 and SUV is going to be a better tool for the job than this thing, but Once you get it out of the suburbs and into the wilderness, these things are just phenomenal. All these weird idiosyncrasies and terrifying on-road habits suddenly make sense. I think it's worth it. If you're going to take these off-road, yeah, I could deal with this chaos. What they cost to buy varies enormously. Older 60 series with millions of kilometers with really questionable histories can be under 10,000 bucks, but at the other end of the spectrum, a Sahara in mint condition with low kilometers with a factory fitted 12 HT engine, you can be looking up to 85 grand. Just a quick heads up too, a lot of the 60s that you'll see for sale are actually Japanese imports. And look, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to know that the Japanese models run on 24 volt power versus the 12 volt power for Australian models. So you've got to take that into account if you're fitting any aftermarket accessories or need to buy something like an alternator. It might be harder to find some parts. As far as fuel economy goes, look, it's going to vary on a whole bunch of different factors. What condition the engine's in, which engine you've got, how much weight and accessories is on the vehicle, and how much off-roading you actually do. On this test butt, we're seeing figures around about 12 litres per 100 Ks. And as far as maintenance and parts goes, look, these things are pretty bulletproof, but they are getting old, so it's important to budget in for any mechanical repairs and the labour involved in doing it. And if you do get one or have one, make sure you top up those fluids and always keep them fresh. So, should you buy one? Well look, if you're willing to deal with the 30-year-old driving dynamics, the lack of tech, the lack of safety, or the idiosyncrasies, and you're genuinely going to be taking this thing deep off-road, yes, 100% you should buy one of these. Many good or mint condition 60 series are either holding their value or they're increasing in value, and they're being snapped up by collectors. So our tip is, get in now, get in soon, because these things are only going to head north in price. But guys, remember, these things are getting pretty long in the tooth. So if you are going to buy one, make sure you go and get it checked out by your local independent mechanic before you hand over your hard-earned cash. And also, to answer the question that we posed at the start of the video, these are awesome, but no, they're not quite as tough as Chuck Norris, because you know why? Chuck Norris can kill 2 stones with 1 bird. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and hey, what do you think of the 60 series LandCruiser? Let us know in the comments section below. And while you're at it, make sure you press those like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons, and hey, why not go and follow us on all the socials as well? See you next time.